Okay guys, so today basically what I'm going to show you is how to track a nuke. I'm not only going to show you, I'm going to explain basically what you're doing when you are tracking, as in what all the different symbols mean, I guess, that you see on the screen. Okay, so basically all I've done here in Nuke is I've read in the file. If you don't know how to read in files, you just press R, you find your file, and double click it, and there it is. And I have also attached that file to the viewer by just selecting it and hitting 1. And I've also brought in another file, which is just this grass element here. And basically what I'm going to do is take that grass element and have it cover up this over here, because basically what I am going to end up doing with this scene is make it post-apocalyptic. I'm not going to do that here, I'm just that's the reason I set this up to begin with. I also need to make sure that I tell it that it's premultiplied. Premultiplied basically means that it already has its own alpha channel. Otherwise, I'd have to premultiply it myself here in Nuke with a premult node. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is just, as you can see, hopefully, basically this video moves. It goes across the screen, and we're going to track that so that it stays steady, even when it does move, of course. So basically what you want to do here first is bring in a tracker node by pressing Tab key and then typing in tracker and hitting enter. And make sure when you hold shift and then enter, you don't actually want that down your pipe here. The tracker doesn't really need to be connected to the rest of your, whatever you might be doing, color correcting or transforms or whatever. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do when you get your tracker is obviously add your track. But before we add our track, what we want to do is determine kind of where we would put this track. And where you want to put this track is basically in an area that moves. You want to put it on an object that moves at the same pace as what your tracked item will. Basically, because of parallax, if you don't know what that is, it's essentially that things in the foreground will move quicker than things in the background. So if I, tracked the mountain, or well, actually a better idea, if I tracked this right here, which is very, very close to the screen, it moves much quicker than if I tracked this car here or something. And therefore, my element that I track onto here would end up moving at a much quicker pace and not actually stay where it's supposed to be. So to find that track point, basically you want to find something that's unique here. In this case, I'm going to choose this car. I've used it before. It works fairly well. What you can also do here is use this well, I'll leave that for another time. You can use Nuke to tell you what there's a function in Nuke to tell you what is a good tracking spot and what's not, but that's not really relevant at this point. Anyway, so we'll go on ahead and add a track. You can add a track by clicking here, add track. You can also add a track by clicking here to add a track, or you can hold Control and Alt and click to add a track. So basically when you add a track, you'll always get this that pops up, unless you're doing a planar track, of course, which is not what we're covering right now. And what this means basically is this inside box is the pattern that you're tracking, as in everything in here is what Nuke is going to look for when it moves frame to frame. Everything, basically this outer box essentially is letting Nuke know what direction this is moving in. So while this inside box does the pattern, this is really telling it where to look. It's called the search box. So to set this up, we're going to, of course, define our pattern first. Our pattern is this car here. And then we're going to find the search box. You would need to look through your video, of course, to see how it moves. Does it move up and down, left or right? This primarily just moves to the left. So I'm going to limit the up and down motion, and I'm going to limit the negative X and positive X motion. But I'm going to, by holding control, you can just select one of these sides and pull it. I'm going to pull this to the left because I know that my motion is going to be in this direction. So once you've set that up, you can go on ahead and track this forward by clicking here or just pressing V. And Nuke is going to think, of course. Another thing that I didn't actually mention that you need to look for as well is you want to make sure you get a track that's in the shot for the entire length of the item that you're tracking to place into the scene. So if I had chose something over here, basically my grass covers up everything. I'm pointing at the screen like you're here. Basically, my track covers up everything in this region. So if I'd have tracked the top of this bus or something, when it went off screen, the rest of this grass that's over here would have gone with it, which wouldn't be good for what we're doing. So basically, when this track is done, what I like to do is click here on the it's called the stoplight, and basically what it's telling you is everything that's green, Nuke is pretty confident that it got it right. Anything that's not green, yellow, and red, Nuke thinks it's not quite sure whether it got it right, basically. So we'll go back to this red point here at the very end. And Nuke seems to have tracked everything pretty well, even though it's not confident in itself. And okay, so now that we have that, what we're going to do is go into our transform, change this transform to a match move. Make sure that our translation is checked here in the tracker box. Change this to a transform match move, and then create our linked node. Now if you wanted to add rotation and scale, that's what R and S stands for, you would need to get an additional track and just track it as well. And you would just do the exact same process, and that's pretty much all there is to it. You have to have two tracks for rotation and scale because of the way, basically because of the way the algorithm works for tracking. I'm not going to break that down for you. But now that we have this track, basically what we can do is merge these two nodes. So we type in M for merge, and we want our A, which is our grass, over our B, which is that guy, of course, what we've been looking at. And Now you want to connect your viewer to it by pressing 1, and as you can see, there's the grass that I was talking about earlier that's going to be covering it up. And next we want to drop this transform match move into the grass here to make sure that it's going to be moving exactly the way we want it to be. Now if we play this forward, it's going to take a minute to render. I should note that everything that I'm stating here is true for After Effects as well. Obviously, you don't set up the nodes in After Effects; you set it up in layers. But the exact same process works. The point tracking system works exactly the same. There's really no difference. Okay, so we will turn off our overlay. If you want to turn off this tracker without closing these things, you could just close them, of course. But if you have this up and you want to get rid of them, just tap O twice. That gets rid of your overlay. And it looks like it slipped maybe a little there. But overall, the track is pretty clean. And it slipped barely, just barely. But I think if we go into our transform match move node over here, let me get rid of these nodes we don't need to look at. We go on the transform match move node and maybe pull up the motion blur a little. Like 0.3. Then I don't think it's going to be noticeable anymore. Another thing you should be aware of, if you don't, is that you should always set your project settings at the beginning of everything. If you don't set them and you do a track like this, everything's going to break if you have to reset them, and I'll demonstrate that to you in a minute here when this is all finished up. I'll also probably be uploading a After Effects version of this, just so if you want to do this in After Effects and you don't feel comfortable just watching me in Nuke, you can watch it. I'll also be doing a planar track tutorial for both Nuke and Mocha very soon. Sorry I haven't made a tutorial video in a while. I recently moved to California. I switched from a Mac to a Windows, and basically a lot of things have changed, so I haven't had time to make any videos. Okay, so yeah, with that motion blur, and it not only blends a little better, but you can't really see the slip very well at all. Okay, so just for instance, of course I get a dry throw right here at the end. Anyway, for instance, if I ended up wanting to make the format of this video something like, I don't know, just say your typical NTSC format. Of course, what you're seeing right now is still the huge 2K version that I have, but if we reformatted this like we would want to, and we reformatted this like we want to, the track is going to be all weird and wobbly, like you can see here. Obviously I haven't actually adjusted this appropriately, but the track is all weird and wobbly because when you look at the tracker now, don't even know where it is. Oh, right, my overlay is off. That's important. It's way up here, which is not where you want it to be. So just be sure to set your project settings, as well as your frame ranges in here. That'll mess it up too. And if you don't know how to change frame ranges, you can go to Start at 1. This is just for your read notes for each of your files. But anyway, I've covered way more than I was supposed to. So basically that's how you set up a track, as well as how to set up your settings, and it's also an explanation of the things that you see when you're tracking, and a very brief explanation of what premultiplication is. So anyway, I hope this helped out somebody, and I'll see you guys next time.